Hello and welcome to Talk God.
It's as much about you as it is about us here in the studio.
If God is for you, no one can be against you.
Today you can be free. You can have your sins forgiven.
Welcome. This is Thursday, the 23rd of April, St. George's Day. And this is Simply the Truth live with me, Doug Harris. Glad you've joined. John Goodway. Hi, John.
Hi. Good to see you.
And you. Good to see you. I can assure you it's good to see you. Sometimes when my guests don't turn up, I have to have a puppet there. And so I hope you're a bit more animated than a puppet.
I will do my level best.
You will do it. Thank you so much indeed. Good to hear. John is a pastor of Forest Row Baptist Church. He's also very much involved in evangelism, both here in Africa and India. So our subjects today are going to range over the whole realm of evangelism, of how people are responding to the gospel, maybe why they're not responding to the gospel, what are some of the problems that we're facing today, and John's testimony as well. So we'll be looking at all of that over the next couple of hours. John, as I say, it is great to have you with, especially with a name like Goodway.
Yeah.
That's an amazing. You've even got a website that you've made a pun of that on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's called Good Ways to God.
Good Ways to God.
And
okay. www.goodwaystogod. That's where we're. Any emails any websites that we mentioned today, and indeed emails, you can pick up from the office later on. But that's your personal website. And your evangelism.
It's for evangelism.
Mainly, and stuff
sure.
like that. So there's a lot of information on there, but bring us in gently. Start by laying some foundation of who you are, how you grew up, where you come from, anything that you feel is relevant to building a foundation for what we're going to look at later on.
Well, I suppose to find myself in evangelism, and even stranger to find myself as a pastor of a church, is kind of has to be beyond the realms of normal kind of intellect, because I spent 47 years not believing in God. Normal, could I have cared less that there was a God or not? It wasn't something I ever thought about. I come from a family where God wasn't in our equation. My father was a staff sergeant in the army, so I was brought up in Bovington, down in Dorset. Dorset boy born. And as I say, it was very much a kind of a very real, very countryside background. My father, for somewhere to live when he was coming out of the army, he got himself, he'd been a poacher in his younger days, and he'd decided that if you'd been a poacher you'd make a good gamekeeper. And so he,
because you knew the tricks of the trade.
Absolutely, so he took a job as a part-time gamekeeper, which gave us a house, and we lived in a house in Dorset, about a mile and a half from the nearest village. We had a well. No running water therefore, and no electricity, so we had paraffin lamps. So very much a country boy and a Dorset boy,
And obviously no Christian input or any religious input of any kind by the sound of it in your early life.
None at all. I mean, at school obviously we had RE, but it was just a bunch, it was almost like an extension to history lessons, really, you know, because you heard about this bloke who had an ark and kind of all of this stuff. And to me as a country boy, there was this, we were taught that this God had made the world in 6 days and had a rest on the 7th, and obviously that was just, it was never going to happen. No, it was never going to happen.
So you talked about 47 years. So in those first 47 years, you never really even seriously considered God? No,
not at all, no.
Can you, I know there were some quite trying circumstances that led you to it, but can you talk us through how God began to come onto the focus for you?
I don't know. It's really strange, because I suppose coming out of school, and I wasn't great at school, didn't like it a lot. I found that because my dad was a part-time gamekeeper, I used to help on the shoot and used to get paid to help, and so earning cash instead of going to school. And I don't advocate this for your children or anyone else, but to be at home. And a story I always tell is the attendance officer used to come and visit us quite regular, but he loved pigeon shooting, and so instead of getting the telling off, we used to have a good time shooting pigeons together. So coming from that, the first job I did was I was assistant gamekeeper. Then we moved to Berkshire, where my dad's boss said to me, well, you need a job, and he gave me a choice to either carry on as assistant gamekeeper with my dad or to go and help at his big house as an undergardener, and I chose horticulture. Yeah. And that was actually very pivotal in my relationship with my father. It was never the same again.
Really?
It was almost like there was a rejection there, you know, of he's chosen this rather than that, and he took it quite personally. Yeah. And so the aspects of God and all of that, I mean, in horticulture, you know, when you're wheeling a barrow load of rocks, that's heavy and tough. So how can this God kind of put stars in space and stuff? I mean, this is complete nonsense, you know, yeah. Total nonsense.
Yeah. So how did God begin to come on to the horizon for you?
Well, I heard about God through different aspects of life, but I never took it seriously. I remember once having a girlfriend who asked me to go to her confirmation.
All right. And
when I realised she went to church, I dumped her. Hope she's not watching now. I dumped her because I don't know why, but my father was kind of anti, I would say, church stuff. He always told me, if you get involved with the church, you'll get involved with hypocrites. And so it was very much a kind of I'm not saying you can't do this, but I would prefer if you didn't. So because your dad said so, that was enough. He was a staff sergeant. You took notice. And none of my sister, actually, strangely enough, one of my younger sisters, because of the Osmonds, got involved with the Mormons. But I'd pretty much left home by then, and but she was very much involved with the Mormon faith for a long time. And as Dad would say, she was very involved with religion. And but it was never anything.
But that never had any effect on you.
No, not at all. No. And I remember her singing "Amazing Grace," and strangely enough, later in my life, I had the great fortune to become a disc jockey, and worked in Brighton. And when I think back now to my pre-Christian days of playing things like Norman Green Band's "Spirit in the Sky," and all of that, you know, you kind of think, how didn't I see that there was another dimension to this? But you don't.
No.
You know, and as an evangelist, that's useful for you to understand that just because you tell somebody.
I mean, isn't it though that people, we're all the same. As you say, you hear things, but immediately, because it doesn't compute with you, or you're just not interested, it's put to one side straight away, isn't it? And so whereas all these markers are there, and as you look back over your story, you can see there were times when things happened, but it made no difference to you at the time. And that is true of so many people today, isn't it? They hear, whether on this program or others, they hear concerning these things, but it doesn't do anything to them.
No matter how pronounced or obvious you think it is. And I know later on when I became an evangelist, we used to get tracts and things, and some of them you'd read and you'd think, well, how wouldn't somebody notice this? But actually, if you look back to your pre-Christian days, it was obvious because it said nothing to you.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. So you got married, didn't you?
I got married, yes, back in, I think, 82, 83,
right. And then your wife tragically died, didn't she? And
yes, she did.
That began to, can you talk us through that aspect of it?
Well, I know when I married Christine, she was an only daughter, and I've got to say her mum and dad were the most peaceful people I've known. Our family, you know, my own family had been quite a volatile one, but Christine's mum and dad were very gentle. And one thing I really hated about going to the house for Sunday tea was you had to watch songs of praise. And there used to be quite fights if the golf was on, because that was a lot more interesting, even if it was rained off. It was more interesting than songs of praise, to be honest.